Hello everybody, this is YouthCast from Sky Youth, and here we discuss about social interactions, identities, inequalities, integration and environment from youth perspective.
Hey kaikille! Youth for Youth podcast series presents. Today's topic is environment and youth. I'm your host, Ilkhom Khalimzoda, and I have a wonderful, brilliant guest on the topic of environment, Sami El Geneidy, a doctoral researcher at the University of Jyväskylä. Sami is working with the School of Wisdom and leading a project called Sustainability for JYU, which aims to assess all the climate and biodiversity impacts of the University of Jyväskylä. I welcome you, Sami. Please introduce yourself a bit.
Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot, Ilkhom, and pleasure to be here. So my name is Sami El Geneidy, and I'm a doctoral researcher, as you said, from the University of Jyväskylä. So basically, I'm from the School of Business and Economics. My field is corporate environmental management. And as you said, I've been working with carbon and biodiversity footprints of organizations. We had a project that kind of dealt with the carbon and biodiversity footprint of the university, and now we've moved on to do some more assessments, especially on biodiversity footprints of different organizations, such as the S group, which is S-ryhmä, and then we have City of Tampere and other organizations as well. And otherwise, I'm from. I live in Jyväskylä. I've been living here for a while.
We know each other for some time.
Yeah, exactly. Originally, I'm from Turku, though, and you might sometimes hear that.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for accepting the invitation. I'm sure that this discussion would be interesting for us, especially for me, coming out from totally different subject and field. But I think this is something that it's all about us, and everybody should know in certain extent, because there are steps that every individual can take, as far as I understood. Environment is an important topic, and in this discussion, in this podcast, we will ask questions like how humans, animals, plants, and all other creatures live in harmony. What do we know and what do we need to learn more about the environment we are living in? What it has to do with young people, and how can young people make an impact on their own environment and on their own future. We will also get some more questions from Sky group members, Finnish intercultural community members that were keen for today's podcast and have sent some questions. If we will have time, we will elaborate those questions too. Let me remind ourselves what is Sky in brief. Finnish intercultural community, or Suomen kulttuurien välinen yhteisö, is built to encourage, empower, and bring closer the people who newly arrived into Finland to the Finnish society, and also open and attitudes of welcome and inclusivity and in the whole society. So in our youth group of young people without which we can't imagine the future, I've got this project from Solidarity Corps, and they are trying to do their best producing a podcast series, and that's why it's called Youth for Youth. Basically, they are involved in this project, and they have helped me a lot, and they will do the further work. Thank you, Sami, for coming again. So if we start from very beginning, if we look into the very basic idea of what we have to know about our environment.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's quite a big big question, but maybe we can start kind of building upon it bit by bit. Well, what do we have to know? First of all, we have to kind of acknowledge that there is kind of a crisis going on. So we have especially like two very important like crises going on in our environment. So we have the climate crisis, and then we have another crisis that is the biodiversity crisis. So basically disappearance of natural life from Earth, and what we have to kind of acknowledge is that it's us humans that are like causing these things, and I mean the situation looks quite bad, but I think we don't have to kind of let's try not to maybe get too depressed, but we can also do something about it, and that's why I think why we're also here.
Yeah. How would you, in one sentence, explain what biodiversity is?
So, biodiversity is life. Biodiversity is life in all its forms. So, it's nothing more complicated than that. That's biodiversity.
If we elaborate more, does it mean that all kind of biological beings in its diverse form, and when we say that we have a crisis, we mean that this diversity is decreasing, or we are losing some of our biodiverse living environments?
Exactly, yes. So basically we are degrading like the homes of those different forms of life. So we're using land, we're using forests. Climate change is basically changing how different life forms can persist. For example, here you see, well, today there's a lot of snow, but in general the trend is, that these snowy winters will kind of become less and less common, and for some species, for example, that is kind of an issue. So those are different kind of things that affect life on Earth, and yeah.
Wonderful. And if we ponder further, what it has to do with youth, young people. We know in the decision-making level there has to be certain policies, and in the academia, the research presents data for us, and in general society, companies like you just mentioned, they try to now look into their footprints and all of those things you mentioned. But how about the individual level, and especially in the life of young people?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think for me, like, to be honest, like, young people have been the drivers of this change and kind of this acknowledgement of our situation. Like, I feel like the young people have been the ones who kind of go out to the streets and, call for action and say that, we have to do something, which is the message of the science. So I feel like in some instances they have been the active parties, really, like taking the message of science to and trying to kind of advocate for that. So I think that's definitely one role for the youth, and of course what I think is kind of important from the perspective of youth is that they are the ones that have to kind of deal with these consequences in the future. So that's why I think it puts a very strong emphasis, I think, on their message as well. And personally, like, I can tell, like, from a personal experience that when I started my studies here and everything, and I have to say, like, I wasn't too concerned about things, even though I studied like environmental things and so on, but I wasn't like too engaged with the topic. But then when I started nearing the end of my studies and I was doing a thesis, and I started reading about this climate reports, and then around that time actually this Fridays for Future movement started happening, and
I see.
Yeah, and then it really like hit me. I looked at the news and I was like, wow, these young people, like they're really, this passionate and kind of taking this message out. And then I was like what am I doing? Kind of hit me in a way.
If we want to put into the shelves, because today a lot of terms around there. Now you talk about biodiversity and climate crisis. I have friends talking about animal rights. When they talk about animal rights, the concern is the animals and their lives, so they don't have to suffer.
Yeah.
But I think that differs a bit specifically from the climate work, while being linked at the same time. And biodiversity seems to be another aspect of it. All of them are connected, but can we separate them into different boxes as a field or as an issue that each individual takes into account? Or how do you see it? I'm trying to look how do you see these things?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. They're kind of different issues, but revolve around the same things, which is basically like a good life for all beings in a way. I would say that you can separate them, yes, but as said, they're kind of part of the same coin. And what especially comes to this climate issue and biodiversity issue is that the scientific community has actually now quite clearly stated that we should actually solve these crises simultaneously. So we can't decide that, okay, now let's solve this climate thing first, and then we can look at the other things a bit later. But it doesn't work like that. So there are some trade-offs. There are some, for example, some climate action can be harmful for biodiversity or vice versa.
Oh, yeah.
And we have to kind of look at those at the same time and find the best solutions for both if we want to.
Yeah. It's very much interdisciplinary as well.
Yeah, exactly. And oops, sorry. I can also say perhaps again a bit like a personal reflection on those key aspects. For example, if you consider food, that's something that a lot of people talk about when we talk about these things. So if, for example,
should we eat less?
Maybe maybe. So if we consider food, if I want to choose something that's climate-wise smart, I might
local products.
Yeah, I might choose, for example, something. Let's say a fish that's produced locally, like fish from here, and it might be very wise climate-wise. But then again, if we look at the other aspect you brought out, the animal welfare aspect, then I might consider, okay, is it ethical, for us to, kill this fish and use it for our purpose? Then it's another question. So we have to kind of look at these different things in our decisions. Yeah.
It is difficult because if we look into environment and climate crisis, animal rights. For example, I have got a few questions today about animal rights. One of our colleagues asking that if we start consuming less animal-based food, does it answers the question, or does it helps, or where we find the middle ground? Do we need to abandon anything made from animal at all, or there is some balance? Because what about infinitely producing and reproducing animals? Would that have any other consequences? Of course, it's difficult and different questions in one, but yeah, we may have some reflections on it.
Yeah. Well. Speaking maybe from my expertise regarding climate and biodiversity impacts, well, the research is quite clear on it that we have to reduce the amount of animal-based products, and it will have a huge impact on the general it's maybe I would say even one of the biggest things an individual can do is to shift to a plant-based diet. It doesn't mean that you would have to 100%, take everything away. But let's say start with 50%, move on to 80%, something like this.
Right.
So it's quite clear that it's a major issue within I would say in climate impact and biodiversity impact. And then again, you also have the animal welfare issues, of course, with the current mass-produced animals.
Following up this the similar question, we live in Finland, and as an individual, as a group, as a larger society, as a Finnish state, there has been a lot of things going on this regard. Now take totally different country of the world, a developing country, for instance. I can give you dozens of examples where climate is not a topic of discussion at all. So how do you see the globe? Finland is taking really serious steps, in other part is really lacking taking any action. How these two intertwine?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I would say in Finland, we have to take a lot of responsibility because we have a high footprint per person. So basically we consume a lot, and we actually
we consume a lot of biodiversity.
Yeah, that's too, indirectly. So we actually consume a lot of things that come from these developing nations. So actually the environmental problems happening there are mostly due to consumption in Western countries. And
very good point, because I had a guest from my country of origin, stayed with us for a week and then spending all this time, and what he mentioned is that the variety is so big here in food consumption, and that made me think actually. I was proud at that moment, thinking we have a variety of things here. But now, from this point of view, it's interesting. We have this high purchasing power, which enables all the possible wishes to be present in our table. Exactly.
Yeah. So I really do think that it's good that kind of Finland and such countries, for example, in the EU, are taking this high responsibility as they should. However, I do still think that it would be very sad maybe to see countries, for example, in the global south going this same direction. I think we took the wrong path. Maybe we have highest social welfare, but it's not sustainable. So I truly hope that we can find some other ways for this kind of social welfare growth in global south, other than material consumption and such. But it's a huge issue, of course.
I have another question from colleagues saying that we are pretty sure that Finland is taking a lot of steps in environmental issues within Finland, but it has been reported that Finland sends some of its waste to developing countries. For example, Turkey receives, I don't know the numbers, the tons, maybe megatons of waste coming from Europe, where perhaps in Turkey, I don't know how those are utilized, or so this is the climate damage, or is it ethical at all?
I don't know specifically actually about Finland, how much we export waste and stuff. But I've heard the same about you, exporting to other countries. And yeah, I think that actually relates to my earlier point as well, that we're kind of exporting a lot of our environmental impacts. So we actually produce a lot of goods, for example, clothes, we produce food, those kind of things. A lot of them are produced outside of our country. And then we bring them here, and the environmental impacts from those products are not, like, counted in our climate goals and those kinds of. I think, well, other people than I have also like advocated for this thing, that we should like account more for these outsourced things and take them more into account into environmental politics in Finland.
If you quickly take Finland into evaluation within the Nordic countries and within the Europe, do you think the actions speaking loud, or there are still a lot of things lacking?
Well, it's a tough question, I think.
Is it?
yeah, it is. It is kind of. It's always hard to compare. I'm kind of as a scientist, I feel like I'm always like trying to find those things to improve, and I think we're good in many aspects, but yeah, there's a lot to do. I honestly don't know how to compare to other Nordics, like how we would compare to those. I really can't answer to that, but I do know that in some regards we're like kind of a bit better maybe, but in other terms we're lacking. So there's definitely a lot to do.
We advise our audience to go and search for it. So let's give them a task.
Yeah.
Let's look for how Finland stands out or behind the European standard.
Yeah, that's good.
Another question I've got here, a colleague is asking, how will life on our planet be impacted if we don't take those concrete steps? What should we or the next generation be prepared for?
So if we don't take those actions, so what?
I mean,
yeah,
necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as we can do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we don't take those actions, then it's gonna be it's gonna be hard, for sure. Within the near and like long term future. There's already signs, especially in the climate sphere, that we might go over the 2-degree target, so the climate might warm. So you will experience more heat waves. We'll experience more drastic weather conditions. We will probably have more migration
due to climate change.
Yeah.
Catastrophes.
Yeah, exactly. And due to biodiversity, there will be, or I hope there won't be, but if we don't do these actions, there might be food crisis more. So there, decrease of pollinators and those kind of things that affect food a lot. And there's a lot of things. I would actually really say that it's not an option. Like, it's, if we want to even survive, as a humankind in the long-term future, I think we have to take these things into account even more seriously than they have been now.
Just it came to my mind, people have an argument that like we have lived like this for millions of years, never, taking into account what we eat and how we live. But why now?
Yeah, well, first of all, of course, we haven't lived like this for millions of years. So actually we can look, I don't know, industrialization, it happened very fast, very, very fast in human history. It's just a tiny second in all the human history that this happened. So maybe the last 100, 200 years we have lived.
19th, 20th century.
Yeah, maybe something like this we have lived. In addition to that, of course, population grew a lot in the in the previous century and now also. That's luckily coming to a more stabilized, but so yeah, that's my first one. So we haven't really lived like this for a long time. We're consuming individually more, definitely a lot more than we have during our previous history. So
I remember your message to me when I was talking to you about US, visiting US, and you told me that your annual climate budget is filled. I was like, really? You have a climate budget, climate planning of every year. And this is not the only occasion. For example, when we used to go to skiing, and I 5 times offered to go by car, but you insisted walking there. Looking into these habits that you developed, which is an indication of certain steps you personally have taken, what would be your suggestions and advice for youth, for young people, they can take in everyday life?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good thing. Well, I would say first of all, like, of course, it's about you, and you're all like different individuals, and you don't always have to, shoulder and take everything by yourself. I think that's one of the kind of maybe more harmful sides of this individualistic like culture that we have now. But I think one of the good things that you can do if you have the possibility is to kind of join a group. So you can join a group with like-minded people who advocate for these kind of things, or even maybe you don't have to join them actively, but support them even like with something more passively, or in social media, or something like this.
Collectivize your actions.
Exactly. So you can even form your own groups and kind of discuss about this and send your kind of together you're bigger, basically. Well, okay.
Coming to the everyday steps, for example.
Yeah.
In a daily, let's say. Daily,
Yeah. So if
daily choices that we can do.
Yeah. So if we really talk about concrete things, as I said before, relating to the food discussion, one really big thing is reducing basically meat consumption. That's a big thing you can do, and while it can only like happen, within yourself, it's also important to notice that we have our social circles. So you might have some friends, you might have some family, and so on. And why you not maybe push your agenda to them? If you do these things and you start kind of like saying that, okay, I want to eat this kind of food, then it will spread and kind of affect people.
Word of mouth, or
exactly.
The organic way of sharing the way of life for our future.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's one thing. So there's the food is one big where you can kind of individually contribute a lot. Another is mobility, of course. So if you have the ability, of course, like reducing
green ways of travel.
Yeah. And it's also, I think, good for your health, like walking, cycling where you can.
Just to clarify for our audience, what are those options? Is it train?
Yeah, well, I'd say in an everyday, like if you live in a city, for example, walking, cycling, then buses, and then of course between cities you have these highway buses and trains. Those are all like
by
good
buses
options.
It's because of public transportation, and then one bus can get thousands of people a day. Is this the reason, or because they are based on the electricity, or they are based on the fuel? What is the idea of?
Well, it's both basically, yeah. So even though you would have a bus that runs on oil or gas, it's very efficient because it takes a lot of people in, and it's very efficient. It's much more efficient than going with the car. And even with the car, like if you go with the car try to think if you can pull, with other people,
yeah.
then it becomes more efficient.
Yeah. After your annual budget limit, I start paying attention when I've booked my tickets, and there were option of reducing your footprint, where you add some more euros. Do you think that helps? I don't know actually how it reduces, but I've seen those options when you purchase a ticket.
Yeah, so that's basically called carbon offsetting.
Offsetting,
Yeah,
right?
offsetting, yeah. So, yeah, you have a lot of those options, especially with flights nowadays. I would say that they can help. Like, let's say you have to, or you do that flight. So, what you can do is you can offset your carbon footprint. However, it has to apply to certain criteria, and currently a majority of those offsets don't meet credible offset criteria. I'm not gonna go through them right now, but there's basically something. You cannot just do anything to offset your carbon. You cannot just plant a forest somewhere and be happy that now my carbon footprint was reduced. But it has to meet some credible criteria, and unfortunately, currently most carbon offsets don't meet those.
Any other specific advices how to reduce the everyday? We talk about decreasing the consumption, especially the animal-based food consumption, commuting, transportation.
Yeah.
What else?
So what else?
Second-hand shops.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one good one.
The culture in Finland.
Yeah,
really
exactly. The second-hand culture in Finland is pretty good, and overall, like reducing the amount of things, clothes, appliances, all those things can help. And if you buy a second-hand, that's really helpful. If you, of course, now it's maybe a bit more like it's financially a bit hard to repair things, I think, in Finland, but I hope it's going to change in the coming years. But
by repairing, you mean?
For example, your electric appliances, your
yeah,
phone, or your
yeah.
clothes, or something like that. Now it's, I would say, quite expensive.
Getting difficult. Day by day.
Yeah.
You better replace then.
Exactly.
I don't know if it helps then.
Yeah. I think that's at least one thing, and then there's of course now with the energy crisis a lot of discussion about putting your room temperature a little bit lower maybe, or I don't know if you live in an apartment where you can do that, but if you can, that's one thing.
Yeah.
That you can
Take a cold shower.
Yeah.
Ice swimming.
Yeah.
Healthy lifestyle actually. It's interesting that we have come from rural lifestyles. We've run to the cities to progressing cities and developing with high speed. But then in the cities, what you miss is the rural life again, like the way that is organic, the way that is simple. It's very interesting dynamics here.
Yeah. I mean that's true. Of course, there are even the rural kind of people, I think, have a lot of different kind of lifestyles, and it's not just one group.
Yeah, exactly. Let's check the time. I think we've done really great job, although we're not supposed to evaluate ourselves, but our audience would do. Thank you for the great job and for coming and speaking. From your knowledge, I think this would be of use for our young people, and I hope they will put questions under this podcast. If there is an interest, we can develop more similar topics and discuss in various locations and under different circumstances. So I thank you, Sami, for coming and joining. And thank you for our audience for listening. We'll see you in the next episodes.